Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today we're talking about workstation management, and this is the first part of a three-part series. So today we want to talk all about kind of an introduction, back to basics, everything you need to know about workstation management. Next week we're going into server and network management, so the core infrastructure at your customer sites. And then in the third part we're going to close by talking about reporting and analysis in detail. Today's webinar is presented by Bryan Zimmerman, Product Manager here at Enable. I'm your host, Ali Mahmood. Our agenda today is we want to take a quick look at some of the trends with workstation management. What are the latest technology trends and what are the impacts of those trends on some of the workstations that you're managing? Then we'll go into Workstation Management 101. And at the end we want to give you some practical advice. So we want to go into a demo of how you would actually set up your workstation's onboard devices and do the configuration that you need to do. So getting things started, the technology trends that are impacting workstation management today, it really all centers around the cloud. So if we look at the average customer 5-10 years ago, 100% of the server and the background infrastructure was on-premise. Exchange servers, all of software was sitting on every device. And what we're starting to see in the last couple years is this strong shift to the cloud. When we take a look at the average SMB, it's very likely that they're consuming 1 to 4 services in the cloud, and definitely Office 365 playing a very strong role in that, of moving people away from on-premises equipment into cloud-based services. This is a trend that's only going to continue. I mean, 10 years from now, we have to imagine that everything except for absolutely data critical, mission critical applications, airports, banking, finance, most applications, most software is going to be in the cloud, and it's going to be a subscription based service. The big problem with that and the big impact on your management revenue is that today it's very easy to quantify what you're delivering to on-premises equipment, what you're doing for that on-premise server. When things start to move to the cloud, a lot of the management, the setup, the licensing, the onboarding, that's taken care of by whomever the customer is purchasing the software from. So your value at managing the cloud specifically is going to go down, so the revenue is going to drop there quite a bit.
And there is a little bit of a trend from cloud. Is right now we're not in the situation where everything is in the cloud. We're in the situation where things are moving there. Where a lot of vendors right now are offering a hybrid cloud model where there's an on-premise appliance or an on-premise piece of software that has a cloud mirror or a cloud aspect to it. But that's a transition stage. VMware is one example. Right now with vCloud Director, there's situations where you can have basically a cloud mirror of your on-premise ESX infrastructure, but it's going to move to a situation where a good portion of the clients are directly in the cloud. And as that movement continues to happen, the value that you're delivering needs to adjust and evolve with that cloud evolution.
Yeah, some great points, Brian. And really, this isn't happening all today. If you are onboarding a new customer today, even Enable, we would recommend that you go after that server revenue. There's at least a couple years of strong revenue that can be taken from the on-premises equipment. It's just to discuss, what's happening, what are the shifts in the market with servers moving to the cloud. Today's webinar is just about workstation management, so we're just talking about this in the context of workstations. Next week we'll get into more detail about servers in the cloud and what specifically you should be managing in the cloud. At the end of the day, we really think that cloud can take the equipment, it can take the servers, but it will never take the users. The users will always exist on-premise at your customer's location. Their devices, their workstations will always exist on-premise. So while the equipment might move, the specific management roles that you play might move, the value that you provide stays the same. You help users. Today you help them by managing on-premises equipment. Tomorrow you're going to help them at their workstations, and you're going to help them at managing their off-premises equipment.
And also, as things evolve to the cloud, the user problem becomes more and more complex. Whereas right now, a user needs access to his machine, his local domain on-premise resources, as well as email, things like that. But in the future, you might have 10, 20, 30 different cloud apps that a user needs to be trained on, provisioned on, need to be configured to meet their needs. And in addition to having access to the intranet, both on-premise and remotely, user expectations are changing dramatically as the cloud is evolving. Users need to be always connected. They need 24/7 access to both internet and intranet resources, as well as easy, quick access that they can understand to all their cloud apps. So as this evolves, not only do the users represent your biggest opportunity for revenue, they also represent a more complex problem that needs you as the MSP to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few people that run their own business, and one person was just telling me that, they're a small one-person business, and they realized that when they had to cancel one of their credit cards, that they were subscribing to 9 different SaaS applications, and they had to move all those SaaS applications onto the other credit card. And I have to think that if a one-person shop is using 9 applications, then a larger shop, a 5, a 10, a 15-person shop is using a lot more. And it sounds easy, I go to the website, I sign up to this new service with a credit card, but who's going to manage all of that? And when I hire a new employee, who's going to set up the 10 licenses for all the applications? And if we expect the business owner to go into their account on all of these different applications and do all the configuration work, I just don't see that working. So that's the complexity, I think, Brian, that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And to Ali's point earlier about the revenue base shifting from the on-premise servers to users and to cloud, what we need to do as an entire market in order to address both the more complex problems at the user end and that shift in revenue is increase the value that we're delivering to the user and that we're delivering to the desktop. And that's really what we're focusing on in this webinar and what the problem is in front of us. And that will prepare us for moving the actual cost model in the future to a more user and device-centric model rather than server-centric.
And really, at the end of the day, Brian, I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to see, today I'm managing an on-premise server for $100 to $200, depending on the level of service I provide, per device. In the future, we're going to see not quite those numbers. I'm never going to charge $200 a month for a workstation. But when I spread that out across, the management that I was focusing on one single device on-premise, the revenue of each workstation, each user is going to go up, and we're going to see it sprinkled across everybody. So maybe even as an a la carte service, depending on how many SaaS applications you're managing, but I would do it per user, rather than per on-premise server. So taking a look at today, if I were to onboard a workstation today, what does that look like? So we've broken it down into 4 phases. The first phase being kind of a one-time activity. Onboarding a device is it's a basic IT project. It has a start, it has a finish, not really an ongoing activity. But as soon as I've onboarded it, it enters what we call the device management lifecycle. Management being a core piece of that. So how do I proactively maintain this device? When I'm monitoring it in my network operations center, how do I respond to problems with that device? How do I make sure that that device is compliant, that I'm deploying AV, patch, backup, etc.? All that falls under management. Then, of course, issues do come up, so support is a big part of the device management lifecycle also. So anytime there's an issue, I need a fast way to respond to that. I need to be able to track my activity and log that as tickets. And then at the end of it all, I have to turn around and show the customer all the work that I'm doing. So reporting is a key piece that we need to keep in mind, that at the end of each month or each quarter, however often you sit down with your customer, I need to show them all of the management activities and all the support activities I've done. Help them, justify the money that they're spending with me. So going into these in a little bit of detail, when we think about onboarding, and we're talking about Workstation Management 101 here, what are the things that I need to do to automatically discover all the different types of workstations that my customers might have, and how can I make that easy? So what we're recommending is that you should make sure that you have some tool to automatically discover devices. You don't want to have to do any work to manually scan or go out into a network and onboard those devices manually. Just too much work, time consuming, and hey, you might miss a couple devices.
Yeah, and there's really three drivers to this. One is making sure that you're in compliance. So for compliance-driven organizations, security-driven organizations, making sure that every endpoint connected to the system is protected and accounted for helps you ensure that you're protected from data loss, you're protected from malware threats. It's really just a good practice and required by a lot of organizations. The other aspect is when you're doing your pricing for a customer environment, relying on them to report to you what workstations, printers, servers exist is going to result in underreporting. Most companies don't really know all the machines that exist in that network because customers are bringing in their own as part of the bring your own movement, or they just haven't accounted for all the equipment that's in that office. And so that could result in you underreporting and undercharging in your original assessment. So in the pre-sales cycle, being able to run an assessment to understand everything that's in that environment and do it in an automated fashion that doesn't require your technician to walk around with a clipboard is definitely essential in speeding up that sales cycle and ensuring that you're being compensated and charging properly and ensuring compliance within the environment.
Yeah, and Brian, and we're not just talking about Windows workstations, though that's the most common. What about Linux distributions? What about OS X? What about printers, etc.? You need to be able to automatically discover all of that, regardless of what type of equipment it is.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that IP connected equipment that customers will forget they have, but rely on extremely heavily. Printers being the most common example of that.
Yeah, and we just have to think that if I were onboarding a new customer and I scanned and missed a printer or missed an important laptop, as soon as that device fails, they're calling you, screaming at you, why didn't you know about this? Why can't you fix that problem? So being able to automatically discover everything is absolutely critical. It's really the foundation. If I can't monitor it, I won't be able to help or troubleshoot it. When we talk about monitoring, so I've discovered a device, I know it's there, but what should I be looking for? And something that your remote monitoring platform should do for you is have kind of a pre-built checklist or a template to say, for a Windows workstation, these are the 5 services, the 10 things I should be looking for, so that you don't have to think about it. You can still customize it and tweak it and go as advanced as you want, but if I'm onboarding a customer that's paying bottom dollar for the service, if they're just paying me minimal management fees, I just want something that's going to go out, discover their devices, onboard them, and it's automatically monitoring everything, and as soon as there's an issue I get alerted about it. So not a lot of time spent for me to set up that new customer. I let the system take care of it. Versus if I have a platinum level customer, someone who has asked for a lot of customization or has a lot of critical equipment, I've gone the extra mile to make sure that I'm monitoring everything there perfect and everything that they need. But for the most part, the system should just take care of all that for me.
Yeah, one of the key messages here is it's not sustainable to spend a lot of time managing the management tool. And one of the things that you need to make sure you can do is to set up this monitoring and get to the desktop in a scalable way. So having the ability to have this out of the box monitoring for the general use case is extremely important. Now beyond this though, you need to make sure that your tool allows you to customize your standard configuration. So for instance, let's say you have some requirements in your SLA to monitor for specific Windows event log events regarding a custom application on all your servers and workstations. If you have to set this up on every device you onboard, it's not really a scalable model and it's a lot of wasted time. So you need to make sure that your tool not only has out-of-the-box intelligence, but has the ability for you to modify that out-of-the-box configuration so all devices in a single set of clicks or new devices onboarded are all given that same standard configuration.
I mean, at the end of the day, the customer is not paying you a lot of money to onboard their devices, so you should spend as little time possible doing the onboarding work. And that's our general philosophy for everything when it comes to remote monitoring is if you're not getting paid for that activity, we should be automating all of it, as much as possible, so that it doesn't take up your time, and then you can spend your time on other things that actually generate revenue. When we think about management, if we think of a network operations center, you have a list of everything that you're looking for, all the critical servers and infrastructure at your customer site. You need to be able to respond to issues quickly there. You need to be able to do proactive maintenance in a scalable way, rather than remotely logging into one server at a time and doing that piecemeal. And you need to make sure that all of this equipment is compliant and protected. So I have AV, backup, patch, everything set up that I need to. So when we think about a NOC, there's a few key aspects that you're going to need. So I'm managing these devices again. So on the left, I have a list of all workstations that are under my purview. We might have a few technicians at our company. I just want to see the workstations that are my responsibility. Then I want to be able to get a dashboard view of one specific device. I want to see what's going on with it so I can troubleshoot quickly. And then I need all the tools that I can to deploy AV, patch, backup, or to log in and support that device remotely. So everything I need has to exist in one application. As soon as I require multiple applications with multiple logins, I'm slowing myself down, and really we just want to be as efficient as possible here. A couple areas we wanted to talk about and maybe focus on a little bit more is automation. Automation is so important, and it's likely that most people on the webinar today are doing automation in some form. But automation, if we're just going to talk about the basics of workstation management, this is going to be one of the biggest time savers for you. If you can set up automation to take care of all of that proactive maintenance, so you almost never have to log in and do any defrags, DNS flush, anything to maintain that workstation, you need to be able to do that quickly and efficiently, but the automation itself can't take as much time as it does to do manually. I shouldn't have to maintain my automation, and it shouldn't be difficult to set up, and everybody should be able to run it essentially. So that's our philosophy behind Automation Manager, which was pretty much the first drag and drop automation. We still think it's the only drag and drop automation tool that's out there that lets you just grab whatever task you want to do. So in this case, delete temporary files, and just drop it into a policy, and then I save all that policy as my workstation management policy. I might add a couple other policies for custom people, like the CEO's laptop gets treated different than a general laptop. But in essence, it's really just these drag and drop objects that let me create a policy in 20 minutes, and then I set that up to run on a weekly schedule. So automation is central, but it has to be simple, it has to be easy, and it has to be accessible to everybody within the company.
So speaking a little bit about the value of automation, and most of you will be doing automation in some way, shape, or form. But if we look back in the past, before managed services had matured, really everything was project revenue. Whatever time my technicians spent, I would rebill that time. So you were really limited in terms of your growth and your revenue by a multiple of the time that you had in your technicians. But with automation, what you can do is continue to deliver that value to your customers without actually taking your technicians' time. So your revenue growth potential is essentially only as large as your ability to sell the business. And it helps you grow scalably as well. And as commoditization is something that is affecting the managed services market, this protects you from that by allowing you to do more with less and allowing you to grow considerably without having to worry about your cost to deliver that service.
And just to give you an example of a couple Enable partners that are very successful with this, a 3-person company who's able to manage 2,000 devices. So the only way that you could manage hundreds of devices per person is through automation. Basically that automated onboarding, automated setup, and then automated proactive maintenance. So really I just have this team of 3 really skilled people that respond to critical issues, but they don't have to worry about onboarding a new device. They don't have to worry about configuring all the little nitty-gritty details, and they don't have to worry about logging in to remotely maintain those devices, because that would be impossible. Nobody has that much time in a day to support 500 devices per person. Another critical part, and this is just a no-brainer, pretty much every MSP is delivering one or all three of these, but to be able to deliver all three from a single application is critical. So again, our approach to remote monitoring and to managed services is that you should be able to do as much as you can from a single tool. As soon as I have to open up a different application, that other application has a different user interface, different steps, different processes. It's less efficient to use two tools than it is to use one. So being able to deliver patch, backup, antivirus, all from a single application, that's really just a key thing that we like to deliver. So moving into support. So we've talked pretty much all about management. Bryan is going to give us a great demo of setting up those devices, managing them, taking care of them, and we'll also see a little bit about support. Support is something that's just always going to happen as long as there's humans involved, and even sometimes when there's not, things go wrong, and I'm going to have to support that user. I'm going to have to support that device. What we want to hit on here is that remote control is a great tool, and we think that it should be integrated with your remote monitoring. Accessing remote control should be quick, but there is a better way to do things, and we think that you shouldn't have to use a remote control session every single time there's an issue at your customer site. When we take a look at some of the top call drivers that your customers are bothering you with, password resets ranked very, very high among our partners. When we surveyed asking, what are some of your top call drivers, password reset always seemed to float to the top. Common issues like being unable to print, slow performance on a machine. These are the reasons your customers are calling you, among hundreds of others. When we take a look at just password resetting in N-central, our approach here is that you shouldn't have to remotely log into any other system to solve that problem. I should be able to reset that password from within N-central. So I should be able to pull up that domain controller, find the user, and just hit reset. So a couple clicks instead of starting a remote control session or connecting to other equipment to get the job done. And that's just one example, and Bryan's going to take us through a few more of how you can get the job done a lot faster and have a much better experience for the customer.
Right. So what we've done here in a lot of the recent features within Central, that gives us these abilities to reset passwords, as Ali is describing. And imagine if you can resolve 50% of your help desk tickets in a tenth of the time. Imagine how many extra hours that's going to give your technicians a week to focus on projects that have revenue tied, or activities that will delight your customers and deepen your customer relationship. That's really the power of being able to provide support in a more integrated and quick and seamless way. And really what we've seen in our beta program and our early adopters is that kind of usage, is 50% of those tickets being resolved extremely quickly, leaving them room to, as we mentioned before, grow scalably and focus on the activities that really matter to your customers and your business.
Yeah, and Bryan, maybe just to kind of drive that home, this was a process that we went through with a lot of our partners, and we just wanted to understand, what are all of the steps in your the way that you support your customers today, and where are all the broken parts, where are you using multiple tools so that everything can be simplified. And with traditional support, we discovered that people were using 4 or more tools. So they were using a ticket management solution or a PSA. That's how they would open their tickets. Then they would use their RMM platform, remote monitoring and management, to find the device, get the information on the device, but pretty much right away just launch a remote control session. To launch remote control, I would need to use a password manager to look up the credentials for my customer device. Then I can start troubleshooting. So the thing about remote control is, pretty much everyone on the phone knows how to use remote control because they know how to use a workstation. They know how to go through control panel, open up a command prompt. They know how to access all parts of the Windows user interface. The thing about that is that you have to go through multiple windows. You don't know exactly where the problem is, so you're doing all of your troubleshooting on the end device and interrupting the user in the process. After you fix the problem, you disconnect. But during that entire time, that user could not access their machine. And sometimes that doesn't matter, sometimes it does. Sometimes it's the business owner and he's in the middle of something important. Sometimes that device is an important device like a point of sale or another critical application like that. and while you're supporting, nothing else can happen. So that was a big problem that came out of a lot of the research we did, and one of the areas we wanted to focus on. When it comes to closing your ticket, you go back to your PSA and you have to find the ticket and then manually type in the notes, because that remote control software, it didn't track any of my activity and it's not going to help me update the ticket. With N-central, we found that, basically out of all that research, that you should be able to, and now you can, do everything with one application. So instead of going to my PSA, I just go to my RMM and I find that device and all associated tickets. So whether you're using Autotask, ConnectWise, or Enable's Help Desk Manager, I can get all tickets associated with that device, or I could create a new one from within N-central. Now, instead of remotely logging in and worrying about credentials and things like that, I just look at that device's dashboard and I do all my troubleshooting from there. So again, instead of toggling through multiple windows, instead of running command prompt on the end user device, and actually them watching me do all of that activity, they watch me go into command prompt, they watch me open up regedit, and they can see everything that I'm doing, which is a huge problem. I can do it all remotely. I can do my troubleshooting and then I can do my fixing remotely without bothering the user and without them seeing anything that's going on. So this, out of all of our research, floated to the top as the best way to support a customer. If I could do everything from one tool and if I could do it without interrupting them, that was the top two things that all of our partners were asking us for.
And resolving issues is something that's expected by your customers, and something that obviously you guys can do. You've built your business on it. But resolving an issue in the background without interrupting them, resolving it magically, that's a delighter. And really what we've tried to do here is make your workflow more efficient such that you can really delight your customers with an experience like no other. Resolve the issue without interrupting them, resolve them without them even understanding how. You just snapped your fingers as far as they're concerned and the issue is fixed, because it's all behind the scenes and it's all integrated with your single pane of glass console. So that's really taking it up a notch when it comes to providing that help desk service support to your end customers.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And maybe just two quick things before I kind of add to that thought is, this tool, this direct support feature that Brian's going to show us, all of my actions are tracked, so I just push the notes. I pick 3 of the steps out of the 10 that I did. I'm going to add those to the ticket and then close the ticket. So again, just less steps to get the job done overall, and the feedback we got from our partners using this functionality is that more than 50% of the time they think they would be on the right side of this chart. So more than 50% of the time I can use direct support to solve those problems. And another partner said that they could solve issues in 15 to 30 seconds rather than the 4 to 5 minutes that it was taking before. So a huge time saver and less steps to take. And then on top of that, what Brian was saying, you're going to delight the customer instead of interrupting them. So it's a win-win-win all in all to go down that route with direct support. So just to close on reporting before we get into our demo, reporting is really important. Pretty much everybody on the line knows how to onboard, manage, and support their customers. That's something that you're doing today. Some of the tips that we've given you now are just ways to automate that, to do it more efficiently and to scale your business so that with the same people, I should be able to manage more customers and increase overall revenue. Reporting is the thing that you do at the end of the day, at the end of the month, to show the customer exactly what you did. And this is the relationship building part of all of it, because everything else was pretty invisible to the customer. Support is rarely a good experience for the customer. We think direct support is going to fix that, but even in the middle of a support situation, something is broken on that customer's device, and in general, nobody likes it when their computer's running slow and things like that. They're happy when you fix it, but they forget about that, within an hour or by the next day. So at the end of the month, it's your turn to remind them of everything you did and the value that you provide. I think that when you onboard a new customer, and everything is chaos on their network, and you come in and you install AV backup, patches, when you optimize all of their workstations and everything starts humming along nicely, and then you're proactively maintaining everything so nothing goes wrong in the future, the customer is very happy for the first little while because they still remember the pain of what it was like before. But when you're 6 months in or 12 months into managing that customer, if you're not reporting to them on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, they've forgotten the bad and they just remember how things have been for the last 6 months. Things have been good. Why do I still need to pay, the same $100, $200, $300 a month that I'm paying you to manage all my equipment? And reporting is your chance to really show them and to sit down and go through that.
Yeah, the biggest value that you add to your customers is the lack of problems, is fixing problems before they start through your expertise and automated proactive management strategies. So what this means is they have a lack of issues. Problems did not even occur, but customers don't want to buy a lack of problems. They want to buy something. And so being able to provide a tangible report that really shows this is what you bought, this is my value, keeps them from asking, what am I paying you for? And that's a situation you never want to be in. And the better you are at being proactive and making sure the issues can't happen, the bigger reporting is in terms of ensuring that value is understood.
Yeah, and there's, so as I mentioned, this is part 1 of a 3-part series, and the third part we're going to take a very deep dive into reporting and spend the entire hour on reporting. There are 2 reports that I wanted to touch on very briefly, just so you have them in context of the entire workstation management lifecycle. Number 1's an executive summary report. So this is the business report. This goes to the business person, it goes to the business owner, and it shows them a summary of all activity that you've done at a very high level. And it basically says, I've protected your devices, I've answered this many support tickets, and it's because of me that everything is going well in your network. And it just reminds them of all of that. The second type of report is an assessment report. So an assessment report is what you would use alongside of our free Essential licenses. So when Bryan talks about Essential and all the great data that we're going to see in the demo, there's 2 types of probes that you can send out, 2 licenses on that probe. And the paid probe has more monitoring and it includes some other great functionality. The Essential license is just monitoring information only, and it's really meant to be used like this. I would go into a new prospective customer and I would say, hey, would you mind if I spent a week taking a look at your network? I'm just going to deploy these light monitoring probes. I'm going to generate a report. Then you and I can sit down and see if my service makes sense for you. And as a free consultation, I'll give you this report so you can see all the problem areas with your network. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to buy anything from me. I'm just doing this to see if there's any way that we can work together. And that's just been a more successful tactic than walking in and say, if you don't buy backup now, your service could crash tomorrow and you could lose everything. Scare tactics or just talking about what you want to give them isn't a great sales tactic. But going in and giving a free consultation, leaving the report with them, that's been very successful for a lot of our partners. So that's the other type of report. And like I said, we'll go into more detail 2 weeks from now. And the very last thing is your ticket management solution or your PSA solution. PSA and ticket management are basically at every single point in the device management lifecycle. So after I onboard, while I'm managing, while I'm supporting, PSA and ticketing is how I'm going to track all of my work to make sure that I've caught all the billable hours that are associated with it, and then I can create invoices from that. And then reporting at the end of it just sums up all of that activity so you can demonstrate to the customer the level of support that you're providing them.
So what we've really tried to do in some of our recent updates in Essential is not just provide features that are valuable, is really understand the technical workflow that your technicians undergo when supporting customers and when providing service, and insert ourselves in that workflow in the places that matter most in terms of helping your business be more efficient and in delivering better value. So PSA is a big part of that, and this is why you're going to see PSA being involved from end to end. This is our deepest PSA integration yet, both from reviewing past tickets to logging and updating tickets with troubleshooting steps to billing profiles. We've really made sure that PSA and ticketing is involved in the workflow from end to end.
Yeah, exactly, Bryan. And just to kind of sum up what Bryan was talking about. Autotask, ConnectWise, or Help Desk Manager from Enable, all three of those ticketing solutions are fully integrated. So we're about to jump into the demo, and everything that we're going to see in there, from tracking your actions, from creating tickets, updating tickets, just know that it applies to all three of those solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, Ali. So what you're seeing here is in Central 10. For those who are familiar with 9.5, the first thing you'll notice is the new updates to the look and feel. We've updated it to be more in line with current web trends, more of a Metro interface, and we definitely spent a lot of time, over 100 hours of user experience research, to ensure that not only are the features great, but that the usability of this system is best of breed. All from the color schemes to the difference in contrast to space and white space and padding, icons. We really wanted this to be the most usable RMM it can, and really be a delight for your technicians to use. So we've talked about a lot of topics today, and we certainly don't have enough time to go through everything that Incentral can do in the desktop, but I wanted to highlight a couple key aspects. That's onboarding and the support. When it comes to management, both everything from AV, backup, patch, to automation, we have a lot of webinars and help videos that you can see on the Enable Resource Center that go through how our product can accomplish those things for your customers and how you can set that up effectively in your environments. So I definitely recommend that you do review them. What I want to talk about here is first of all the onboarding. So in order to understand the onboarding, the first thing to understand is the architecture. So when you go into a new customer environment, first thing you're going to do is install a probe. That probe is a piece of software that does a network discovery, and you can either set up a network discovery at the install of the probe in the installation wizard, or you can set up a discovery separately within Incentral, and you can do that simply by actions and then run a discovery. Now what this discovery does is it pings out to the IP range that you define, simply looks at what devices are there, what devices can be discovered, and from that we'll use other technologies such as SNMP, WMI, TCP/IP, and an attempt to remotely install the agent using a proprietary remote install technology that we've developed. And through this we're able to understand what the devices are and get as much information as we can about them. And this goes for Windows devices such as servers and workstations, as well as ESX hosts, some backup software that's integrated, or there's integrated monitoring for, to printers, routers, switches, IP camera, pretty much everything that's connected to the internet we can monitor in some way, shape, or form. So the discovery tries to retrieve everything it can regarding this information, especially all the supported SNMP information that's included in the discovery, WMI, things of that nature. So after doing that, you can actually set up auto import settings. So you can set it to automatically import all devices that are a workstation or all devices that are a laptop. And once they get imported, they get the standard configuration profiles added to them. Now, to understand how that aspect works, we first need to explain what a filter is. So within Incentral, we have these concepts of rules and filters. And in the background, these are used to create the out-of-box monitoring that's applied to your devices. When you import a laptop, automatically Incentral says, yep, this is a laptop via the discovery information. As it's imported into the system, we then will look through the available rules and say, yep, this laptop matches this rule, so I'm going to apply this standard configuration. Out of the box, that has important things such as CPU, disk, memory, connectivity, things of that nature. But if you want to add more to the standard monitoring, it's very easy to do. Nothing is behind the scenes, nothing is hidden. Everything that we do out of the box can be configured and customized to meet your unique needs. So first, to understand that, we have this concept of a filter where you can simply look at all devices within your environment at one customer or multiple customers that match a given set of criteria. For instance, devices that are a laptop, or devices that are a server, or devices that are an Exchange server, or are an Exchange server that have Flash installed, or are a laptop whose agent is checking in and has AV Defender installed and does not have Flash. Complex and/or logic, simple versus complex filters, good set of out-of-the-box filters, but you can create your own as you need. And based on those filters, what you can do is target a set of devices to apply other settings. And those settings are really important when it comes to automating the onboarding of your devices. And those settings can include things from service templates, so the standard monitoring checks that get applied when you import a device. You can define all those via service templates. You can choose to target devices on any filter. For instance, this is the Active Directory rule that is targeting devices with Active Directory. You can enable, patch, install other licensing options such as direct support or professional licenses. You can add scheduled tasks via scheduled task profiles. For instance, you could add your workstation management platform to the devices. You can add maintenance windows. You can add notification profiles. All this can be done via rules. And as we mentioned, out of the box, we already apply what we would consider the general case for most MSPs. But your special case can be customized very, very easily via these rules. So now that we've talked about the onboarding, next what I want to talk about is an individual device. And actually on the onboarding topic, everything that I talked about it can apply to devices in the system as well as new devices being added to the system. Bulk changes are something that's very easy from the All Devices view. I simply filter for a number of devices and I can edit them, add services, make changes directly from the All Devices view. But if I want that to apply to all future devices that don't yet exist, that's where I create the rules and filters in order to automatically apply my standard configuration. Very powerful, very cool, makes your life much easier in the future. Okay, so looking into a particular device, I would simply go to the device I'd like to analyze, and I can open it in a new tab or the same tab, and really inspect what's going on in this device in a deep way. The first thing that you'll see as we log in here is the overview page, and the overview page gives me that single pane of glass view and understanding of everything that's happening on this device. First thing that should pop out at you is the Active Issues tab. So previously I would need to go into the Monitoring tab or the Status tab in order to understand what were the monitoring checks on this device that were in a normal status versus failed versus warning. But here in the Active Issues view, it pops up, these are the services that aren't normal. These are the problems that exist on this device. Now, in order to understand this overview tab, let's take an example. Pretend this user called me up saying, I'm having troubles printing. What I would do here is I'd first look at the Active Issues view and understand, is there any problem on the device that we're monitoring for that might actually contribute to this particular symptom? And in this case, there isn't. Then I would go to my Recent Tickets widget here, and I can look at the historical tickets that have been logged on this device. Research shows that technicians who can actually look at the past in terms of past problems can speed up the resolution of future issues much quicker. So looking at those past tickets to look for documented resolutions or patterns of behavior definitely helps to create more complete resolution. Beyond this, though, there's a number of other widgets that help you with key information such as memory, CPU, processes, services, ports, patches, and a lot more. So this gives me information that I need to understand what's happening on this device and triage the problem. So in the printer example, there's nothing really here that relates to that, so I'm going to move on to trying to fix the issue. Opening the tools, which is really what we call direct support. Direct support is the set of tools that allow you to control the end device and fix problems without interrupting that user. So opening tools first, the services pane pops up. This gives me control of every service on that device. I can right click, I can stop, restart, change the startup type, I can easily set up monitoring within Central, and I get instant feedback, that flashed green telling me that that action was completed. If there was a failure, it would tell me instantly what the failure was. So it's very, very real time, very connected to the end device, data driven, very powerful. Dependent services can easily be seen. And in my example of the printer issue, I'm going to go down to the print spooler and see what the status is. In this instance, the print spooler is actually running, as you can see. So I am going to right click and restart it. Maybe that's going to resolve my issue. Next, what I would do is move over to the printers tab and look for the particular user that I'm working with here. And I can see instantly that the wrong default printer is actually selected for that user. So to resolve the problem, I'm simply going to set the new printer as default and print a test page.
So Brian, we just had a couple people asking that, they see that flashing on the screen. Is this all happening in real time?
Yeah, this is all real time. This is all data driven. When I click on the tools and when I clicked on services, that was not cached information. That was populated, and it's refreshing down here every 30 seconds or whenever I click the refresh button. And that's true for every tool that we're using. It keeps a cache running in the background as soon as you click on tools, and that's being used to populate it. Every tool is different for how often it refreshes, but it's very, very quick and very, very real time based. So processes, for instance, every 10 seconds it's going to refresh and give you the current status of this system. So we're acting on real information. Okay, so in my particular instance of resolving the printer issue, once I'm done here, I'm going to go to the audit trail, and I can see very, very easily what steps I took to resolve the issue and use that to either update or create a ticket. And this, of course, integrates with all three of our deep integrated PSA solutions, Autotask, ConnectWise, and then our built-in Help Desk Manager ticketing solution.
So Brian, while that's loading, a few people are asking about all this functionality that we're seeing with direct support. Is that only on professional licenses? Can you speak to that?
Right, so this is included. The great news about this is as powerful as this tool set is, we have included this in your professional node licenses. So that means that the professional devices you had purchased previously will automatically get this new functionality added, which is great news. Now, you're going to have some environments out there where you're only responsible for providing help desk services, and a professional node is not warranted from a cost perspective. And for those customers, you can actually purchase this a la carte for only those devices. So it's included on professional and available a la carte via a SKU that you can add to your essential devices. Now, this added to a couple other changes really represents our first cohesive a la carte strategy. So you have on a professional node, you get monitoring, patch, automation, and direct support. The last three of those, patch, automation, and direct support, are all available as a la carte licenses, or you can buy a professional node and get all four. So really with this, you can customize the licensing options to meet the needs of your individual customers as they exist. So moving on to a couple of the other tools here, because there's a lot here for your power users and your novice users. I want to look at processes briefly. It's very similar to what you saw in services, but a lot more data, a lot more information. You can see DLLs used, registry keys used, threads, information that helps you troubleshoot performance issues extremely easily. And that's even more true about startup applications. If I'm having a slow system at startup issue, I can very, very easily see what are the processes that are using the highest disk I/O at startup or CPU at startup, and from there it will help me actually troubleshoot the biggest issues within my system from a startup perspective. More advanced tools such as a built-in registry editor that is made to look exactly like Windows Regedit, that allows me to edit keys, create values, etc. File system tool that allows me to send, receive, copy, paste files very, very easily and simply. And of course, all of this is logged within the audit trail. My personal favorite is a fully featured two-way command prompt that is real-time and allows me to do almost anything that I could do directly on the device. So this is not a send and receive response type of command prompt application. This is more real-time. This allows me to use tab complete. It allows me to use the up and down arrows to go through my previous operations. It allows me to run PowerShell. Once I'm in PowerShell, I can run CMDlets. I can instantiate objects. I can act on those objects. Really fully featured, great tool for your power users. Now I know we definitely want to save some time for questions at the end, Ali. Is there any other questions that have come up?
Yeah, absolutely. People are just going kind of back to the beginning of onboarding and discovery. Do I need to install anything on the target device, and do I need to consider any dependencies on that target workstation?
Right, so most of the features we've talked about regarding delivering help desk services and automation require our Windows agent. Now our Windows agent can be installed remotely on the device using the probe and our remote push application, which is just part of the discovery. Set up a discovery from the probe and set it to install agents, and it just happens. All that's required is an admin account on the probe that has access to the admin $share on the remote device, and we take care of the rest. And other than that, there's nothing else that needs to be installed to manage these devices. Our agent takes care of everything. As far as the probe goes, it's something that's very similar to the agent in terms of what it is. It's a Windows installation package, but it takes care of different types of tasks. It does remote monitoring for things like printers, ESXi hosts, network devices, things of that nature, as well as helps to do things like push agents.
Okay, Brian, and what about monitoring virtual environments or virtual machines? How should people go about that?
Right, so we have an ESXi integration where we can actually monitor the host in order to get important information about the guests. So if you have a virtual infrastructure where you have 20, 30 ESXi guests, we can use a probe in order to communicate with the SIM data on that ESXi host and actually have a service for the guest status of each of those guests, as well as some additional information about vCenter or ESXi hosts.
Okay, Brian, and taking some of the things we talked about at the beginning with kind of everything moving to the cloud, imagine a customer with no on-premise servers. How would I go about onboarding some of those devices?
Right, so a probe is required, but a probe does not have to be a server. In most environments, there's going to be a device that's physically there and on all the time. If you picture a doctor's office, there's always the receptionist PC, or if you picture a retail operation, there's always a system that runs the accounting software, etc. There's typically a system that exists on premise that contains some of the data. That's the reality that we live in today. We fast forward 5 years in the future, sure, there's going to be more environments that are completely deviceless, but that is a problem that we are aware of and are definitely thinking through. But at this time, most of the environments that we encounter do have some sort of device, whether it be workstation or server, and you can install the probe on either of those.
Brian, during direct support demo, people were asking, what about user permissions or firewalls, things like that?
Right, so everything is done through outbound connections between the agent and the in-central server. So the firewalls, it's great. It doesn't really require any work there in most environments. And that's true with all the monitoring within in-central. The agent knows how to speak to the in-central server. It communicates outbound and then establishes a bidirectional XMPP communication channel. And that's actually used to send the real-time requests from the in-central server UI to that end agent. So it's that XMPP communication channel that adds the functionality that looks like there's an inbound connection without actually there requiring one. So that's a great technology. From a permissions perspective, there's a lot of technicians out there who may be a whiz when it comes to restarting services, but may not quite understand regedit. So for those technicians, you can actually disable tools on a tool-by-tool, user-by-user basis very, very easily within user account permissions.
Okay, Brian, someone's asking, how are SNMP devices handled?
Right, so the probe can actually do SNMP tasks remotely. So you can import the device. It looks just like a device as any other device in Central, like the one we showed you. There's not all of the widgets exist on all device types, but it looks very similar. And then the probe is actually the one that does the monitoring of that SNMP device. So printers, network switches, etc. Devices you cannot put agents on. The probe actually takes care of that monitoring.
Okay, Brian, maybe our last question, not 100% N-Central related. Someone's asking about going a little bit deeper with auditing and compliance. I had mentioned to them Audit Manager, but can you just walk us through that, how I would talk about security and compliance?
Right, so one of the things we hear about when it comes to security and compliance is prove that you are managing my environment, or prove that my environment is secure. And so everything we've talked about when it comes to discovery and rules and automatic applications of elements such as AV, patch, etc., and reporting on those elements is actually a key part of security. And a lot of compliance requirements, those are all necessary. Now, if you're talking about vulnerability scanning, we do have Audit Manager, which is a vulnerability assessment tool that will scan using a non-invasive technologies to look for tens of thousands of intrusion attempts so that you can secure your environment in a deeper way to ensure that your information can't be compromised, that you can't have outside intrusion, things of that nature. So that's a non-integrated product that allows you to very, very easily run assessments and ongoing compliance reporting for those vulnerability assessment tools.
Okay, great. Brian, thanks for the great demo. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, Ali, and thanks everyone for joining.
Everyone, hope you enjoyed the webinar. Please stay tuned next week where we take a look at Server Management 101, and then the following week on June 3rd where we dive into reporting and analysis in detail. Everyone have a great day. Wish you all the best. Thanks.